Caroline Brown, and I served in the Peace Corps in Malaysia in the late 60s. One of the memories I have the strongest, and which makes me very active still again today as a returned Peace Corps volunteer, was having been invited to dinner at a Malaysian teacher's home, and his daughter hid from us behind the chair as we were sitting on the floor waiting for final preparations for dinner. And people can be shy no matter where they are in the world, but he explained to me that she had heard that Americans did not like black people. She was a very dark-skinned child. So I think today what that same child might say is Americans don't like Muslims. So I've been active in trying to put together return volunteers and Peace Corps volunteers who are serving today in Islamic countries to work against Islamophobia. I've met so many people through the internet that are helping me with this project, and I think the third part of the Peace Corps Act is to bring the information home, to bring the story of the country you served in. And so many of us get involved in our lives back here in the country, and it's only maybe through national monumental events such as the 50th anniversary that we get galvanized again, but we have to have it as part of our lives all the time. Back to the Peace Corps in Malaysia, the beauty of volunteers having a chance to serve overseas is how much you change. You think you're well established as a young adult. I was 23 years old when I joined the Peace Corps, graduated from college, ready to set the world on fire. But the most important thing for me to tell people is how much I changed and how much I brought back with me and how much I want to continue talking about my service in the Peace Corps. One of the things I did do right after the attack on the World Trade Center was put on my Malay dress, put together my slideshow, and go to the local Kiwanis Club and give a talk, because I wanted to, again, present Islam and my experiences in a Muslim country in the most non-sensational way possible. And that's what I'd like to share with your viewing audience. Thank you.
My name is Mark Brando. I served in Malaysia in the late 60s, 1967, 68, and 69. 2 years as a Peace Corps teacher in a lower secondary Malay medium school teaching industrial arts. The third year I was a ministry advisor, extended to have more of a good time. So at the time I loved what I did and enjoyed it well enough that when I came back to the States I started pursuing my personal dream of fixing cars with the MG that I bought in Malaysia. So I'm still pursuing that dream, fixing a few cars and having a good time after 39 years, with my experience from the Peace Corps being the foundation of all that now.
Fred Putnam, and I was in Malaysia, the state of Sarawak, from 1969 to 1971. And I was a science teacher, and I'm still in contact with a lot of my students, and after I retired I've made 3 trips to Malaysia recently.
Hello, Ruth Muller Zwerner, and I was a volunteer from 69 to 71 in Sarawak, Malaysia, working with rewriting science syllabus.
Yes, my name is Mike Anderson. I was Peace Corps volunteer in Malaysia in Group 20, 1968 to 71.
Hi, my name is Susie Morris. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Kuala Lumpur is the capital city of Malaysia from 1970 to 1973. Of 1970, I think, a rumor had it was the first summer that they started to take people to the country for training. So we left from San Francisco and flew on a Pan Am 747. And I think it was the first summer of the 747s too, to Tokyo, where we spent the night, and then we flew on the next day to Hong Kong, and we arrived in Kuala Lumpur in the evening. And I was very, very, very tired. And they took us to a very modest little hotel, the Sentosa Hotel in Kuala Lumpur. And we checked in, and we went downstairs. It was a very, very lively street scene down there with hawkers cooking and selling foods, people buying stuff. And there was a man right on the sidewalk in front of the front door of the Sentosa Hotel who was cooking fried rice. And we said to our trainer, "Is it safe to eat this food?" And I was, at that point, honestly afraid to eat street food. He said, "Well, you need to look at what it is that you're eating. He's cooking it right now in a very, very hot wok. And he's going to serve it to you immediately. It's going to be very hot, and you're going to eat it right now. So it's probably perfectly safe to eat." So we ordered our portions of fried rice, and we ate our fried rice, and nobody got sick from eating our fried rice. And I realized that just to be afraid of something didn't make any sense. There are things you should be afraid of, but there should be very specific reasons for it. And if there's not a reason for it, why be afraid? So I went through my Peace Corps career doing things that I had been afraid of doing before, but the Peace Corps had taught me not to be afraid. We traveled a lot. We did not have to have hotel reservations before we went someplace. I worked with all kinds of people. Malaysia is a wonderfully diverse country. The majority population are Muslim Malays. There were Chinese, there were Indians, and people from Ceylon, which is now called Sri Lanka. People were Muslims, they were Hindus, they were Protestants, they were Sikhs. I worked with all kinds of people and learned that there was no reason to be afraid of any of these people for any reason. They were just like all of my family and friends at home. So I came home from the Peace Corps not fearful at all of the people in the world. I'd get sick, but I found that the whole world is covered in doctors who know what the diseases are that you would have in that particular place. There's medicine all over the world. So I didn't have to be afraid of getting sick. And since then, I have not been a fearful person. And for that, I am very, very grateful to the Peace Corps. In 1980, my husband David and I went back to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur, and about 1973, the oil money started coming into the country, and it became extremely wealthy. And by 1980, there were huge, tall buildings in Kuala Lumpur. It was 7 years after I left, and I was disoriented. I would stand there and look around, and I had no idea where I was even. But there were several of my old friends and colleagues that were there, and I was able to meet them again and be with them and to introduce David to them, which was really nice. I lived at the Senior Methodist Girls' School, and the caretaker was a very conservative Muslim couple, Fatima and Qasim. And when I took my husband David back to meet them, they were absolutely ecstatic that someone had married me. And Fatima held my hand and my wedding ring, and she kept turning it around on the finger, laughing, saying "Bagus, bagus," which is good. And Kasim was laughing and laughing and saying, "Buggos, buggos." I think that David could have just taken a picture of me and said that he was my husband, and they would have been happy enough. But I think that was the first time that I realized that for a lot of people, being married is really, really important, and that young people get married. I never had that sense in the United States that anyone was that happy that I was married, but they were. I came down with dengue hemorrhagic fever, which is a really nasty disease. The symptoms are you start out with a fever of 106 degrees and you get a terrible headache, and then it's also known as bone break fever. So I felt like my right arm and elbow were broken. And then you hemorrhage, maybe on day 5 or so. And for Caucasian people, the hemorrhaging is in the limbs, like on the surface of the skin. If you've been out in the sun, when you've first been out in the sun and you look really splotchy red, that's the hemorrhaging. And then that goes away. It's about a week of these symptoms. There was no medication for it, and Kasim would go down to the Kadai, or the local coffee shop, and he'd get bags of ice, and Fatima would pack my head in ice for the headache, because I believe the meninges of the brain swells with the 106-degree fever. Anyhow, I was the person who was supposed to be reporting, but I was sick. So the government was a little bit embarrassed because they didn't know it. The Director General said, when I saw him and went up to apologize, he said, well, if his staff gets sick with a disease, he's going to know that maybe there's a problem rather than just waiting for a report. So that was my, my embarrassing moment at work.